In this video, I'm going to be explaining how to use a tool called a Baroque string in order to reduce fatigue that is brought on by the visual system. So if you're interested in learning practical exercises to help improve the function of your brain and nervous system, there is no better place to start than the Baroque string. It is a tool that assesses the most basic functions of vision, and vision itself happens to make up about 50% of all of the neurons in your brain. That means when your visual system is not functioning effectively, you're going to be using up a lot of energy in an unnecessary manner. So this Baroque string is going to be a tool to assess the basic fundamentals of the visual system. When we get these working well, we can save a lot of energy that we can then put towards the activities and tasks that are important to us. So first things first, let's look at the equipment. So to be able to perform a Baroque string assessment, you are going to need to get yourself a Baroque string. So this is what a standard Baroque string looks like. You can buy one of these online, but it's equally possible to make your own. Buying a Baroque string is potentially going to be a lot of money for what you actually get. If you can fix any kind of beads or objects onto a string, you're pretty much good to go. Things to think about. Number one, you want the beads to be movable, okay, so that you can practice it at varying distances. Number two, most of the Baroque strings you will find online are white. If you are in a room that is predominantly white, like this one, you might find that you have some contrast issues when you're trying to do the exercise. If all you can see is white surroundings, you might want to look at a different color of string. Now, what I personally like to recommend to people in the beginning is to use something like this. So this is a little retractable badge reel with a couple of arts and craft beads attached to it. And the reason I like these is while they're not necessarily as long, so we will run into problems later on down the line if we want to get really advanced at this. If you find that doing Baroque string work is helpful for your fatigue and for your energy, having something small like this is pretty handy. You can clip it onto your belt buckle, take it everywhere you go. So a lot of the time I will recommend people, if you're making your own Baroque string, try to make something pretty small and compact. For these badge reels, all you got to do, cut the end off, put the beads on and tie the string back up in a knot. So now that you got your Baroque string, let's take a look at how to use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these beads and we're going to place them about equal distance apart from each other. When we're doing this test initially, it's probably easiest to do it using the length of our arm. So we're only going to be using this much string. And to figure out the distances, usually the way I'll do this is I'll slide the first one as far as I can with my finger whilst holding the end of the rope. I'm then going to pull the back one as far as I can with the length of my arm, and then use my thumb again to try and slide that as far as it can go. And then the middle bead, we're just gonna slide that roughly into the middle. So once we've got these about equal distance apart, then we are good to go for the assessment. Now, if you're using the little retractable Baroque string, we're gonna do the same thing. So we're gonna slide it out all the way. I'm going to keep my finger on that bead just so it doesn't slide down. I'm going to pull the string out almost all the way, so I'm going to get it pretty close to the end there, and then I'm going to try and slide this bead roughly into the middle. So once I have them about equal distance apart, I am good to go. So to do the Baroque string assessment, I'm going to hold one end of the string all the way to my nose. I'm going to hold the other end out directly in front of me, and I'm just going to be staring down the length of this string, and primarily I'm going to be interested in what's going on at the middle bead initially. Now, when you start looking at that middle bead, if you're not sure what to expect, the results can be a little bit surprising and a little bit hard to explain. So I'm going to use this little chart here to help explain what's going on. So this is the Baroque string that we've got set up with the 3 beads on it. And this individual is going to be looking down the string with the green one closest, the yellow in the middle, and the red furthest away. Now, when they focus their eyes on the yellow bead, the one in the middle, because both eyes are focused onto that point, they will just see one yellow bead. But because the peripheral vision of each eye is seeing a slightly different picture, you're going to get this weird crossing effect going on with the other beads and with the string itself. So a correct test for the Baroque string assessment is when you look at the yellow bead, you should see that the string itself appears to split into 2. It kind of goes from 1 string into 2 strings because the right eye is looking at the string from a perspective where it's slightly to the left, and the left eye is looking at the string this way, a perspective where it is slightly to the right. So you will see one eye looking down this way, one eye looking down this way. That will also cause the beads to split into 2. You're going to get like a double vision effect there, again because each eye can see that bead from a different angle in your peripheral vision. Now, if the Baroque string assessment is going well, this is exactly what you're going to see. So you're going to see 2 strings with 2 beads in front, 2 beads behind the bead that you are looking at, and both strings and all the beads should look equally clear. It shouldn't be one side is really sharp and the other side everything's kind of ghosty. You should have the same quality of image on both sides. That is going to give you the information that both eyes are seeing the same information with the same degree of clarity. Now, unfortunately, in a lot of individuals, when you do this test, this is not what you are going to see exactly. You might see something that resembles this, you might see something totally different. So we're going to be going through all the different things that can possibly come up and what we might need to do about them. So first up, what do we do if we can only see one string? So instead of seeing one bead in the middle with 2 beads in front and behind and a kind of string that crosses like an X, we might actually only just see one string and the other one never appears. If this is the case, this is a pretty strong signal that your brain is only paying attention to information coming from one of your eyes when you are going about your day-to-day life. So what we want to do now is figure out which eye is the one that's paying attention. If when you look at the middle bead, you see only one string that starts on the right-hand side of your vision and travels all the way across to the left, that means that the left eye is doing all the work. So that's the left side. Obviously, if you had the reverse thing happening, you can only see a string that starts at the left and finishes on the right. That is an indication that it is the right eye that is taking in all of the information and the brain is paying attention to that one. So if you find this has come up in your assessment, we have one pretty simple solution to help get the brain focusing on the other eye again, and that is to patch up the good one. So you want to spend up to about 20 minutes every day patching over the good eye. So that's the one that was seeing the string. So if it was from the right to the left, that's the left eye. If it's from the left to the right, it is the right eye that you would be putting the patch over. And this is going to encourage the brain to start getting better at processing information coming from the other eye. So when it comes to patching, pretty much anything goes. You know, you can cover it with your hand, you can close it, you can get a kind of pirate style of an eye patch. I sometimes, if I'm doing eye patch work, will literally just use half of a hat, or if you got long hair, you could even go for a bit of a fringe. Just spend some time with that good eye covered and see what kind of sensations you get when you're trying to use the other eye. For a lot of people, they find that they start to get tired very quickly. The eye wants to water a lot. They might even find that their cognitive processing speeds go drastically down. So they find they're trying to read something or react to something and they're actually a lot slower than they thought they would be, because even though the eye is working, they're not used to having the brain process and react to things at the speed that the other eye is capable of. And with this in mind, while it can be fun to put on an eye patch and, go about your daily activities, do be aware that your cognitive capacity may be a little bit compromised. I wouldn't recommend going and doing anything even mildly dangerous when you've got that eye patched. What you then find is that over time, when you go back to do this same Baroque string assessment, you then start to see two lines. Now, they might not be equally clear. We're going to get to that next. But once you start seeing two different strings crossing over and two beads in front and behind, then we are ready to move on to the next stage of the assessment. So the next thing that we might find with the Baroque string assessment is when we are performing the task, we're looking at the middle bead, and we do indeed see two beads in front, two beads behind, and two strings that cross with each other. The problem is that one or both of them is beginning to ghost. And what this is going to mean is that while both eyes are actually taking in the visual information, one or both eyes are having a difficult time when it comes to processing the entire image. Now, if you find that it is just one of these strings ghosting, I would still recommend a course of patching the better eye for a little while. So if the string starting on the right and traveling to the left is the one that is ghosting, we're going to assume that the other one is the good eye. So that would be the one starting on the left, traveling to the right, which would mean it is the right eye that is working better. We would patch the right eye. You will probably start to notice that these results improve over time just from patching alone. But in the case of ghosting, the second thing that we want to look at is stimulating our peripheral vision. So a couple of different ways that we can do that. Number one, if you don't have anywhere you can attach the end of the Baroque string to, we can do this with our hands simply by giving a little tug on the string. So if we put a little bounce into the string, as I continue to look at the yellow bead, my eyes are going to try to make sense of what is happening in the periphery. And what you will probably find is while the string is vibrating, you see that the strings and the other beads are going to become a little bit clearer, even if it's just for a short period of time. And this is something that you can just continuously do little and often throughout the day to help that eye start to pay more attention to what is going on in the periphery. The second way that we can stimulate our peripheral vision is by taking one of our hands and drawing our attention further away than the string itself. So for this, we're going to need to attach the string to something so that we can have a hand free. And then I'm going to do this same exercise. So I'm holding it just at the nose. And now I'm just going to start waving my hand on one side and then switching, waving my hand on the other side. So as I stare at the yellow bead in the middle, I might find that anything that is ghosting on the left side, so that would be the left string going in and the left string coming out, might start to get more clear when I'm waving my left hand at the left side of my head, and vice versa for the right side. So the right string coming in, the right string going away might get more clear when I start drawing attention to my peripheral field on the right side of my head. Now, if you're using the retractable string when you want to create a little bounce in the string, it's probably best to use an index finger, as you're not really going to be able to get that bounce effect. If you want, you can squeeze, pinch the string on the other end and bounce. And this might get a slight effect what you want, but I find it generally easiest to just do a little pinch with the middle finger as if you were pinching a guitar string. And again, this is something we want to do little and often throughout the day. Set yourself a goal of doing it 10 to 20 times for about 30 seconds to 1 minute in the day, and you should start to find it improves over time. So finally, the third thing that we might notice when we are performing this assessment is that the strings are not crossing over at the intersection of the bead. So what I mean by this is when we're looking down at the yellow bead, ideally we want to see both of these strings crossing right in the center. So this makes a kind of X because the string on this side and the string on this side meet right in the middle, right at the point that we are focusing on. But that's not always the case. For a lot of people, they will actually see this yellow bead kind of floating on its own, and the string might actually be crossing in front of where the bead is, or it could be going through and crossing behind where the bead is located. And that might be really pronounced, so you genuinely just see a bead floating on its own in space with the strings crossing quite significantly in front or behind, or it could just be very minor and you see that there is still an X, but it's just skewed a little bit forwards or a little bit backwards. Now, what this is telling us is that both eyes are not necessarily focusing on exactly the same point. If you are seeing the strings cross in front of the middle bead, that suggests that both of your eyes are actually pulled in a little bit too much, and they are almost looking at the world as if everything is a little bit closer than it really is. The reverse is true then for if the lines are crossed behind, your eyes are a little bit too spread apart from each other, and again, your mind is almost viewing the world as if everything is a little bit further away than it really is. Now, if either of these is the case for you, there are two ways again that we can influence this. Number one, if we do not have anything to attach our Brock string to, we're actually going to look at an exercise without using the string at all. This exercise is called a pencil push-up, and it's basically, if you were to look at your finger, you're going to bring it all the way in towards the bridge of your nose and then pull it all the way back out. Now, if you see the string as too close, so these strings cross before the middle bead, we're going to want to only pay attention to the outward portion of that pencil push-up. So the exercise we're going to do is we're going to take our finger, we're going to hold it at the bridge of our nose, so this height, not down here, and we're going to really slowly track our finger as we pull our hand further and further away. When we get all the way out, we're going to close our eyes, we're going to bring the finger in, look at the finger again, and repeat. And we want to do this about 5 to 10 times, and again, little and often throughout the day. See if you can build it up to maybe 20 times throughout the day to see permanent results happening pretty quickly. If you see the string cross behind the level of the bead, then we're going to reverse it again. So we're going to look at the inward portion of the pencil push-up only. Once you get the finger in as close as it can go, you're going to close your eyes, reset, and repeat. So that's what it looks like without the string. If you do have the ability to attach the string to something, so you've got a finger free, we can also do that same exercise, but with the Brock string at the same time. So if I have a situation with the Brock string where I'm seeing the two strings cross before this middle bead, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be tracking my finger going outwards just like I did before, but this time I'm going to start with my finger at the level of the red bead. So I'm looking at my index finger and I'm dragging it nice and slowly all the way out until I get to the yellow bead, and then I'm just going to let go and stare at the yellow bead while I reset my finger. Then my eyes jump back to the index and repeat. And the exercise is the same. You do 5 to 10 reps, try and build it up 10 to 20 times per day. Then the reverse is true for if the strings are crossing too far away, then I'm going to start at the back bead, so that's the green one in this case, eyes on the finger, bring it nice and slowly towards the middle bead, then focus on the middle bead as I bring my hands all the way back to the far beat. And that's it for the assessment. Over time, we eventually want to train each of those things so that we can see one beat in the middle, two beats in front and behind, two strings crossing over, all equally clear and crossing exactly through the middle point that we are focusing on. So that's basically it when it comes to the how of the Brock string assessment. Now it might seem that that's quite a lot of stuff, and you might be wondering why all of it is even useful or relevant when it comes to fatigue. The best way I like to explain it to people is that your brain favors vision over any other sense in your body. In fact, all of the other senses that you have are linked pretty strongly with vision in order to cross-check information, and the visual system actually takes up the mantle of compensating for any other sense that isn't up to scratch or up to speed. Basically what I'm saying here is vision is really, really important, and when our brain is not using our visual system at its most optimum levels, we're going to see energy levels slide pretty hard. The amount of energy it's going to take to make up for a deficit in the visual system is much greater than the amount of energy it would take to make up for a deficit with any other sensory apparatus that you have. If your brain is ignoring information from one eye, that is going to have consequences when it comes to visual detail, depth perception, and it's pretty much going to halve all of the visual power that you have for identifying the names of things, locations of things, etc., etc. If we're not doing well at picking up the entire visual picture, like we saw when we had the ghosting effect going on, this is going to mean that our brain has to actively move our head and our eyes and our body a lot more so it can take in all the information that it needs to. When we get better at keeping our eyes still and taking in more of a picture, we save energy overall because our brain isn't having to look in a million different places at once and remember what everything looked like. Finally, if we find that our eyes aren't actually focusing on the correct spot, this is going to have severe implications to our whole sense of spatial awareness. So if you find your brain is actually perceiving objects as closer than they really are, that actually can be quite threatening feeling. It feels like everything is coming right on top of you when actually you have much more time than you think to react. Or if things feel like they're much further away, then you're probably going to find yourself bumping into a lot of things, and your body's potentially going to start restricting your ability to move to prevent that from happening. Unlike other muscles in our body, our eyes don't really get that much of a chance to rest throughout the day. So if we can improve the way that they're functioning, if we can improve the way that our brain is processing the information coming from our eyes, we're going to find it much easier to retain energy throughout the day. So that is our Brock string assessment. I hope that you found some of this information useful. Please do get in touch if you have any questions.